Yes.
Okay, well, good morning, afternoon, evening, Happy New Year. Before we begin, could you just send us an indication on the message thing as to whether the chat session, as to whether you can hear us okay,
Okay.
whether the video is okay, and whether the sound is okay.
Okay. All good.
Good.
Thank you, Thank you, Matteo. Thank you, Eva. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Sound is okay.
Yep.
All good. Both are fine. All good. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. So what do you want to do? We'll get started. Thank you very, very much for attending this. And my hope is that you, whenever the moment strikes you, that you let us know if you have questions at any time. Send us questions on the chat thing. I have my good friend Diego Goring here. Some of you know Diego. You've been in touch with him. And together we'll try to address your questions about the Driving Strategic Innovation Program. We both think I can speak for us, that this is an exceptional program. And I'm going to try to tell you more about it, why it's been so successful, and why we hope that you'll become a part of this. So let me begin. And before you touch the button, let me just say that what's about to happen is I'm going to violate everything I believe about the customer experience. So normally the way I would begin any sort of conversation with you is to ask you what would add value to your situation. But since there's a lot of you, and since we've never met, and since we're not in face-to-face contact, I'm going to violate that customer experience focus, and I'm going to start by telling you what I hope the program does, and then try to develop a sense of how it does that. And so you get a feel for how it works. So if you could, how do we do this? The first slide. Okay, fine. So let me start by saying I've got 4 or 5 hopes for this program. One is innovation's hot today. It's probably never been as hot a topic as it is at this moment. But for too many people, it's a mysterious topic. And so one of the things that I hope this program does is it demystifies innovation so that at the end of the program, everybody leaves the program with confidence that they know how to be a catalyst for innovation in their organization and in their lives. And you notice I'm not saying that everybody leaves thinking that they're an innovator. I think that's a matter of choice. Some of us feel like we're innovative naturally, and others feel like they need to know more about innovation. I think that's fine. I think the worst thing you can try to do is either fake innovation or feel the burden of having to do it yourself. So that's not what the program is about. The program is about trying to provide sufficient understanding of the art and science of innovation so that you can feel confident in being in an organization, being an igniter of innovative activity, either your own or someone else's. My second hope for this program is that what do I push? Okay, that we provoke a rethinking of what you believe innovation is and what it means. What it means for you, what it means for your organization, what it means for your industry. But my hope is that you have a chance to rethink, because my sense is that most of what we know about innovation is legacy concepts. It's the way we used to do things. It's about technology. It's about invention. And what I hope you see in this program is that, yeah, it's probably some of those things, but it's not necessarily constrained by those traditional topics. It's different. It's not what it used to be. And that's the big issue. It ought to be a significant, I would even say, central piece of your competitive strategy. And how do you build that in? My third hope for the program is that you see that in the process of demystification, that innovation is really, high-performing innovation is really the outcome of better managerial choices. At the center of all of what we're going to talk about are choices. Choices to do this or the choices not to do them. Choices to do it this way or the choices to do it that way. And throughout the DSI program, we focus on choices because we believe that this is a managerial phenomenon and a leadership phenomenon. And you need to be thinking about the choices that you make or don't make, because not making a choice is in fact a choice itself. So it's really about what are the choices that I can make at this point, and how do we go about doing it. The fourth hope is that some of these involve really powerful contradictions. So in a sense, what we believe is that so much of the DSI program is navigating contradictions. For example, the contradiction between creativity and discipline. Well, we believe you need both. We believe that discipline is an essential part of the creative act. And so what we want people to be thinking about is, what are those contradictions and how do I get the most out of both of them? It's no longer either or. It's how do I finesse the two in order to be able to do it? Long-term versus short-term. That may in fact be a completely legacy idea, or incremental versus radical innovation. How do I do both instead of the traditional legacy approach to separating them and putting them in different parts of the budget or different parts of the portfolio? How do we do both? And then the fifth is that you learn something radically different from someone else in the group. So one of the reasons that Diego is so important in my life is Diego is primarily responsible for who's in the program in terms of participants. And what we've seen over the years is that the real strength of the DSI program is in the participants that are in the room. There's huge amounts of experience in the room, and it's a diverse set of experience, all focused on innovation. So my hope is that the very big benefit of being in the room is that you get to meet people who are struggling or trying to come to grips with the same challenge as you are, but they come out of different industry traditions. And as a result, they have different ways of doing it. So that, in fact, you can gain an edge on your traditional competitors because you're talking to non-traditional people. And I think that conversational possibility is really an essential part of the DSI promise. And then finally, that you become a part of an extended community of innovation enthusiasts. So it's not just 1 week. It's the beginning of the rest of your career, where you have a chance to talk to a variety of people who are vitally interested in the same topics and experimenting and sharing those experiences as they go forward in the future. So that's my hopes. Now, my hopes mean relatively little in the grand scheme of things because we really think that it's your hopes that are important. But this will give you a sense, at least, of the way in which we began to design the program. And in the very process of delivering the program twice a year, once at IMD in the spring and once at MIT in the fall, the same program delivered by essentially the same faculty, but in 2 different locations to be able to serve different communities. What we see is that we've learned a lot. We've changed the program. I suspect that if you were to go back and look at the original plans for this program, it would look like nothing that we originally began with. And I think that from my own personal perspective, it's the best week of my life, or the best 2 weeks of my life, because I learn more than I do anywhere else, just by virtue of being in a room full of people like yourselves, but coming from a dramatically different set of industries, knowledge domains, geographic locations. You get to learn a lot. So, having said that, what we set out to do, could you just go back one slide?
Sorry.
Right. What we set out to do was to build a partnership between 2 very, very different institutions, but 2 very successful business schools. And what we've tried to do is to combine the advantages of both into a program specifically addressing innovation. So this whole partnership at the moment is all about innovation. And we've done it frequently. We've done it, if you can imagine, 17 years. Everything's changed. The faculty has changed. The program has changed. Sometimes the locations change. But we've done probably 34 programs, maybe 1,700 or more participants, and we've learned a lot. And what each iteration of this program represents, I think, quite up-to-date material because we're seeing a different group of people each time, and we're using that to change the program. program. I would say on average each year the program changes as much as 30 to 40% in terms of content and delivery. So it's always a very, very different program than the one that we just ran. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is that if I think about why has the program been so successful, I think there's several things that are quite important. And the first is the participant pool. So this is a program where Diego and I start sometimes a year in advance looking at who could possibly be in the classroom, having discussions with our MIT colleagues, and then trying to pick a participant pool that is as diverse as possible, that brings in different perspectives and different experiences and brings them all together for 1 week. This is a case where diversity really matters in the idea flow. We believe, excuse me, that conversations are essential to moving ideas. And if you don't move ideas, an idea at rest adds no value. So we're really advocates of setting up, creating great conversational environments. And the first way to do that is to make sure that you've got experienced, interesting, and different people in those conversations. The second thing is that we've taken a view that we're no longer just talking about the commercialization of ideas or the ideation process, and we're certainly not limited to technology and devices. We've tried to take a content view that is extremely broad in terms of the innovation journey and the innovation experience, and we've tried to build the program and the content around all sorts of innovation. Yes, product innovation, process innovation, service innovation, business model innovation, organizational innovation, experience innovation. What we're trying to do is bring all of those together so that they reinforce one another in the lessons that we consider and the experiences that we share. The third thing is that the faculty that we have all have both academic and practical experience. And we sort of immodestly believe that our experience is as broad as that of the participants. We certainly benefit from being in touch with so many participants. But the idea is that in no case do we have people in the room who have not had some foot in the academic world so that they're able to generalize experiences that they see, but also have real practical experiences so they can share and empathize with the struggles of the people in the room, the participants, about how to get good ideas and get them into practice quickly. And then we try to practice what we preach. You know, we preach being bold, ambitious. We try to preach being customer experience focused. We advocate experimentation, failing and learning and trying again. We recognize that a team rather than an individual, and it could be a real team or a virtual team or what have you, but teams are really the basic organizational building blocks of this. And we're concerned as much about implementation and adoption as we are about ideation. So we try to take those beliefs and put them together in everything we do. So we actually run the program in a way that demonstrates the issues that we believe are critical to being an effective innovator in the future. And we've, as a result, our focus has changed. So we are completely outside in the way in which we think about the content, the discussions, the delivery, everything about the program. We are not inside out. One of the major, I think, characteristics of the program, which are unique, is a real focus on value chain and partnering, or ecosystem development and partnering, because so much of today's innovation relies on that. And that's one of the places where I think the program is different from a lot of the offerings that you see on the market, certainly different from where we began. So if you could, the next slide. So 17 years ago, innovation was all about the traditional innovation funnel and how you got more ideas into this funnel, how you built stage gates to to make judicious choices about what projects went forward, and how you condensed the time to market, shortened the funnel, so that you could reduce your commercialization time. The problem with that, which we learned, was that, can I do this? Okay. Is that that's completely focusing on inside the organization. May be important. And I guess I'm saying that I think it still is important, but the action's no longer there. The action is outside of the organization. The action is in the customer experience, which is the focus of innovation. And the action is how we get new ideas about innovation into our normal innovation processes. So design thinking, business model innovation, how do we take ideas from outside our industry and make them more important to what we do? And so everything we do is based on those two things. In fact, I would say the bulk of the program is focused on the front end and the rear end of the funnel rather than what happens inside the funnel itself. But there is one thing that is important within the funnel, and that is that if you do this, you need to recognize two things, and that is, first, innovation is no longer the exclusive preserve of science and technology. So when we first began this program, it was a room full of engineers, and my co-program director, Charlie Fine from MIT, and myself, we're both engineers. It's great to hang out with fellow engineers, but increasingly what we've seen is that there are relatively fewer engineers in the room and relatively more people from a different world of experiences who are also coping with innovation. And the great thing about that is that the engineers are getting insights from way outside their industries, places they would never think about, and learning how to do innovation better. And the people from those different worlds are getting some real technical insights from the engineers as well. So it turns out that making it no longer the preserve of science and technology or devices has really been an amazing improvement in the learning experience. And the second thing is that leadership is critical to all of this. Leadership to support what we're doing, leadership to make sure that people in the organization are aware of the power of innovation, leadership to reduce the fear of failure, leadership. And so an important function of the program is to not only talk about innovation, but to talk about the role of leadership and really the role of you as leaders within your organization to be able to make this all happen. Okay, so the next slide then. And then, as I said, we think that it's more than just technology. We think it's business models. Business model is probably the hottest topic today in innovation, and we spend sufficient amount of time talking about business model innovation, customer journey, customer pain points, and what this means to you as somebody who's a catalyst for innovation. Customer experience is critical to all of this, but also work style. I mean, in a sense, we're not only talking about innovation outside the organization, but we're talking about innovation in the way we work together. And as you'll see in a few minutes, that's an important part of how we view the program. Okay, so the next bullet point is, we believe innovation should be a verb, not a noun. A noun is, oh yeah, we have an R&D department, or a noun is Diego does the technology stuff. That's not telling us what we need to know. We believe that innovation ought to be a verb that characterizes the way we work, right? So am I personally more innovative as a leader? Is my unit, my organization, more innovative in the way in which we go about the work? We think that we have to make innovation continuous rather than episodic. We have to shed this idea that now it's time for innovation and make innovation a continuing process so that we're able to keep up with the continuous flow of new ideas that are coming at your industry from all sorts of places that, in the past were never much of an influencer in your industry. Okay. The other thing I think it's important to learn is that innovation is a profoundly social phenomenon. Culture matters. You look at organizations like Apple and Google Toyota and Alibaba, and they all have cultures that are more innovative. They're cool places to be. They're the neighborhoods that everybody wants to hang out. And those cultural outcomes are the result of managerial choices. So we spend a lot of time thinking about what are the choices, teaming choices, leadership choices, space choices that you can make to make your organizational culture more supportive of innovation. And we're also big believers, as I mentioned earlier, that all through this, it's who you're talking to, where that conversation's taking place, who's invited, how it's run. That's an important part of how we move ideas from one place to another. Okay, the next bullet point. And so I think in a sense, we're successful if you leave the week believing that innovation should be a lifestyle. That you should exhibit it in everything you do. Sometimes it's big and brassy, and other times it's subdued. But it ought to be there. You ought to be thinking about, what did I do today to give me access to better and newer ideas? What did I do today to think about how to get those ideas adopted? What did I do today to increase the risk-taking in our organization? Those are important things to do all the time, not just when we have a crisis at hand or a burning platform. Okay, so if we go back to the original concept, the name of the program, we think there are three elements that are important. One is the strategy, the strategic nature of innovation. The second is what innovation we're talking about. And the third is, how do we drive it? And actually, we think of this in terms of a Venn diagram, and typically it's at the overlaps. It's where those things overlaps that really the magic is created. But we use this as a template for thinking about what we're doing as we go through the program. So if I think about strategy, for example, and this is a non-exhaustive list, but we're going to be having conversations and illustrations and applications of purpose-driven innovation. How purpose-driven is what you're doing? How does change take place? Why are we doing this in the first place? What are the S-curves that define the rate of change in our industry? We're talking about long-term, short-term, or do those terms no longer apply? We're very much talking about discovery-driven innovation, about learning by doing and then doing it again differently and then learning as a result of that. And we're talking about not only creating value through innovation, but capturing that value as well. What are the elements, managerial choices that we have to make so that we not only surprise our competitors and our customers, but we capture the value that's generated from them. And value chain partnering or ecosystem development is critically important both for all of those things, for generating new ideas, for satisfying customers, and for experimentation. And there's a lot more strategy issues, but these are just to give you a sense of what we're talking about. We're also talking about what's the essence of this innovation? Can we, in fact, see further, faster than others? Can we rely on people who are living in the future, lead users, to be able to give us some indicators about what the smart bets might be about the future? What about business models? How do business models change not only the nature of innovation in our industry, but the very boundaries of our industry? Is it, in a sense, is it realistic to speak about industries any longer? Because most of the change is taking place on the edge where new entrants are coming in and blowing up the hole that traditional market incumbents have on any particular customer experience. So how do we come to grips with that? How do we come to grips with if I tell you that it's the people that you're not watching who you need to look out for, how do you do that? And how do you become more experimental? And what's the role of entrepreneurship? And that's where driving becomes important. How do we balance creativity and discipline? What do our teams look like if we're trying to make big jumps rather than small jumps? And our hope is that by the end of the week, with your active involvement, this becomes not only a coherent narrative that ties the whys, whats, and hows together, but a coherent narrative that in everybody's case is specific to their firm. What do we need to do? Why do we need to do it? How are we going to make this happen? And that everybody leaves owning the material so that it's not just a deck of slides that you're carrying back, but it's it's a set of insights and a story that you're ready, willing, and able to share with your colleagues on Monday morning. That's the objective. So here's how the program works. We start with the selective screening of the applicant pool. I mentioned earlier, Diego and I do that, and some of Diego's colleagues, so that we get experience diversity and provocation. We deliberately seed, or we try to seed, each participant group with some people who are edgy, who have maybe not a chip on their shoulder, but who don't fit the traditional mold, so that we can begin to get real provocational types of conversations going on in the group. The second thing we do is we try to arrange that diverse group around loosely. Everything's done loosely because, in fact, what we don't want to do is come in with a template that says this is what you're going to do now and this is how you're going to do it. That would be far from customer oriented. But what we're trying to do is to create a recognition of shared innovation interests across many different industry experiences, and then put people together in working groups so that everything we talk about in class can be, almost immediately applied to the context in which you have to make your choices, and eventually applied to your organizations as well before you leave the week. We think the worst thing we could do is, have a bunch of dazzling cases that have no relation to your industry, leave no time to discuss your own issues, and send you off. We really want to make this work for you. And so we built a delivery style based on cocktail party dynamics. So there's pictures of Charlie and myself. And what we try to do at a great cocktail party, if you think about how a great cocktail party works, the hosts spend a lot of time thinking about who would be interesting people to get together. They create a venue for bringing those people together. They introduce them to each other. They seed the conversation with different ideas that hopefully will provoke great conversations among the people. And then they stay involved to be able to learn what to do next. So that the great cocktail party is an ecosystem that grows throughout the evening. Charlie and I think of ourselves as hosts. We've got lots of ideas, we've got lots of frameworks, we've got lots of experiences, but we think that we shouldn't just dump them into the classroom front to back. But what we ought to be doing is actively engaged in how the conversations are taking place around the room and around these different interest groups, and then bring those together in some way so that we can introduce ideas and material when needed, rather on demand, if you will, rather than on our schedule. So what comes next? Okay, and then each day has sufficient white space. What that means is that the whole day is not taken up with presentations. That what we've tried to do is build in each day an hour, or in some cases two, so that you can, in these loosely arranged groups, can take the ideas you're hearing and apply it directly to the challenges that you see, and then share those and use that as teaching material for all of us, so that we all learn from your conversations, or we all have an opportunity to suggest things that you might not have thought about. And so Charlie and I are in the room trying to listen in. Some of our other faculty are also there, and the idea is to try to use this as a laboratory for exploring the issues you have and seeing how the material and ideas and contents and frameworks we're talking about can best be utilized in your own situation. And then finally, our hope is that on Friday, when we finish the program, that everybody leaves owning the ideas, that the ideas have been successfully transferred and interpreted into your situation, so that they're not just a set of ideas that we spoke about last week at IMD or at MIT, but that they're a set of ideas that I can work with in my own repertoire of managerial skills so that we can make our organization more innovative. So, not there, too fast.
Sorry.
Okay, that's it, good. So that's my sense, 30 minutes, forgive me for talking so fast, and pushing these things out. But I wanted to give you some sense of how we saw this program and relationship with the participants. And I'm now hoping if there are any questions that I can address those questions while we're all together.
Mm-hmm.
So, Diego?
Everyone, feel free to type any questions you wish to be addressed, if you wish, really. So, Sylvie, I think Sylvie asked about the certificate. Can one use the MIT degree tag? She's talking. What is it? She asked, I think.
Okay. Can one use the MIT degree tag? And I don't know what that means.
Yeah, Sylvia. Sylvia, are you referring to the degree or the level of or the certificate, the document that will be delivered at the end of the program? Because if it's the case, Sylvie, the system here, DSI, it's a certificate-based program, so you have a certificate at the end that confirms that the program has been completed successfully. And here at IMD, you become an alumnus of the IMD community. But at MIT, the alumnus system is different than us. It's by credits. So you don't necessarily become an MIT alumnus, but you have 5 days of credits that can be granted towards the MIT alumnus or certification. So
Right.
we have a different system.
Right. But my understanding is that if you think about the advanced certificates that MIT offers, that the DSI program counts towards that.
Yeah. I can see that Augusti found how many participants per course. We have approximately around, I would say, between 40 and 50, 55 participants. In the past, we used to have all the way to 60,
60,
yeah,
right.
60, 65. So it's a fairly big audience. And so, yeah, I mean, the minimum is really around 40. So between 40 and 55 participants on average.
Could I say something about
Yeah, of
that?
course.
So that often people say, "Wow, that's a lot of people in the room." My sense is that that's a really good size for this program. What we want to do is we want to get more conversations going, and we want more ideas and more experiences being shared in the room. So I find that when you get to like 35 or so, that's insufficient, and it's insufficient for the quantity and quality of the conversations that we're hoping to engender. So when we get that number, what I always say is then you see me doing all the work, and or Charlie, and you don't want that. We really want to have a set of conversations that are going front to back, of course, traditional classroom style, back to front. Okay, because what we want you is taking ownership of this, but also side to side, so that there's all sorts of conversations going on. I think that the real breakthrough learning in the program often takes place at lunch or in the evening, or in our small, loosely arranged groups, when you find yourself talking to somebody who's dealing with the same issues you are, but from a completely different perspective. Mm-hmm. And we can only do that if we have, I think, at least 40 people in the room. So I'm an advocate of 40 to 55. I think it's a good number. And I think that we're used to working with groups that size, so it's not really a problem.
So quickly, I can see a couple of questions regarding the location and the cost of the program. So the program takes place 2 times per year in spring here at IMD. And actually, the next session is starting on February 24.
Yes.
And in September at MIT in Boston in the US. So this is for Sergey. Then I can see what is the price difference. So the cost of the program here at IMD, it's 11,500 Swiss francs. So 11,500. and at MIT the cost is $11,900. So basically, it's a kind of pretty similar cost, I would say, considering the currency rate. I can see another question from Kamlesh Pandey. Would you include cases from developing world?
So, so both Charlie and I have spent a significant portion of our lives working in emerging economies, I've been living in China for quite a while and ran a joint venture there for 2.5 years, the China-Europe International Business School. So it was still in the same industry that I'm part of. But I've worked in China actually every year for the last 40 years. Next week when I'm in China, it'll be 40 years continuous working in China one way or another. Charlie at the moment is not only a professor at MIT, but he's the president of the Asian School of Business in Kuala Lumpur. So we have a great deal of respect and sensitivity for the emerging markets, and there's lots of illustrations that can come out of those experiences. That's not a problem.
And Mr. Antonio Morelli, for you, Bill, I see, what is the typical organizational role of innovation catalyst joining the program?
That's a great question. So the innovation catalyst thing is a term that I tried to come up with just in putting these slides together, because I wanted to reduce the burden of anyone feeling that they themselves had to be innovators. So this is not a program for innovators. It's a program for people who are enthusiastic about innovation. If I look at the general role that most of our participants have played, it typically is someone who's responsible either for some type of, I really want to choose my words carefully here. Well, so there's a large number of people who are responsible for technical activities, either in business units or at CTO types of levels. There are people who are responsible for the relationships in an ecosystem between providers and suppliers and customers of ideas and services, products. But typically it's someone who has a business or staff responsibility for getting things done or bringing new ideas to market or creating new sets of experiences. Increasingly, we've had a lot of people coming out of the financial sector, and we've had more marketing people as well. So the historical technical focus has blurred a bit. But I think that the one thing they have in common is some type of responsibility or involvement in doing things differently, whether it's product or services or experiences, doing things or business models, doing things differently in the future.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, we had a conversation this morning about a couple of participants who have applied for the program, and what they both had in common in this particular case was they were not technical people, but they had a belief that innovation could be important to the way in which their staff function operated. One, in fact, came out of the legal field, and he believed that his staff could be better if they thought more innovatively about what they were doing. And so it was that type of interest that had led him to the program.
And I can see another quick one from Sylvia as well about the daily structure of the program. Basically, the program starts every morning at 8:30.
Yes.
And with the session, and finishes around 12:30 for lunch. You have 1 hour break for lunch, and it starts again at 1:30 p.m. until 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So yeah, it starts at 8:30 in the morning and finishes every day around 5:30, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Yeah, and let me just add to that. So it starts at 8:30, but for the first hour, a group of participants takes control of the way in which the day works. they reflect back on the day before, and their idea is to provoke us to think differently about what we heard the day before, so that we continue that conversation. But the class, in a sense, is taking control of that first hour so that we think differently about that. It's also a very energizing session, traditionally, because it's always a challenge of some sort. In the afternoon, we tend to end around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then have an hour or more of this white space to talk about some of the things so trying to take the material that we've been covering and apply it to the experiences or the competitive context of people in the room. Occasionally we'll have outside speakers who will come in and who will speak about specific domains, artificial intelligence, big data, things like that, where we really have a short burst of content so that people can get brought up to speed on certain issues. And at least 2 evenings we go out for dinner together as a group in the hopes of creating different conversations. So we go to a different context. But pretty much the day works that way.
Yeah. I don't see any other questions, so maybe we should continue.
So, hopefully this gives you a sense of the way the program works. To be honest, it doesn't work like I've done today, because you would be doing much more of the talking. It would be much more conversational. We would be seeing each other and we'd be learning together. But putting that aside for the logistical necessity of the way we've done it today, I think the program has been successful because we have people coming together who are interested and enthusiastic and experienced in innovation in one form or another, and for a week they find themselves in a community with very different people, but the same interests, enthusiasms, and challenges that they have. And if we as cocktail party hosts do our job correctly, we provide frameworks and tools that help your conversations become more effective. Both Diego and I would be extremely happy to answer any questions you have going forward. Send us an email, let us know what's on your mind, and we can address it either directly by email or by phone, and it would be a pleasure to do that. And so thank you very much for spending some time with us, and I hope to see each of you in the future at some point in driving strategic innovation.
So I can see some people are still writing, so we're gonna okay. Whoops. Okay. Sorry everyone. Is it possible to resume? So I will make sure, of course, to send to everyone who joined the webinar this morning. Everyone will receive a link with the recorded version, and happy to include in my email, like Mr. Samir is asking about general information about the program. So I will send you as well some other documents, everyone. So just bear with me, of course, a few days before my colleagues from the IT team to do the editing and everything. So, but worst case scenario, next week you all will receive the recorded version of the webinar.
Could I just say a couple things? So Ricardo, you asked about how useful is the program for people who have only academic experience in emerging technologies. We, in fact, have had quite a number of people like that, or like yourself, who have come out of an academic environment or going back into an academic environment, either at faculty positions or research positions, and they come to DSI because they basically want exposure to enough of the managerial and business elements of innovation so that they can run their projects more effectively. It's worked out pretty well for them, and I'm in continuing touch with many of them as we go forward. The other thing is, for those of you who are on Twitter, if you follow me or hashtag IMD _B as in boy, I as in India, you get almost every day there's an ongoing conversation about many of the issues that we're talking about in DSI, and you can get a flavor from those conversations of what are the sorts of topics that come up that are interesting to the people who have been through that experience. So it's either follow me or go to hashtag IMD_ B as in boy, I as in India, and you'll get a flavor of those conversations.
Maybe one more. I can see Mr. Marcus Wasser. Are there any references regarding from former attendees available to discuss? We can. I mean,
yeah, we can.
Of course, we can. I can. So maybe, Mr. Wasser, are you you would like to talk to a past participant? I'll be happy to do that. Of course, to put you in contact with a past participant, Marcus.
Send Diego some information about the industry that you're in and the reason you're considering DSI, and we'll put you in touch with somebody who has similar sorts of experiences and comes out of that background.
Okay, I can see your answer, Marcus. Thank you. Okay.
Great. Okay.
Oh, and I can see actually, you see Marcus. So Marcus and Paola, I'll try later on to put you both in contact.
So Paola is one of my favorite alums from the program, and she's an academic scientist who has moved to an industry position and a PhD researcher. And we were supposed to meet today, and I have an accident where I dislocated my shoulder, so I can't meet with her. But she's using her time wisely to volunteer to be able to talk to you.
So thank you, Paola.
Thanks, Paola.
Thank you. Any other question? I go back a little bit in time to see topics within the program. Well, Sylvie, there was part of the slide you could see was really pretty much covered the topics within the program. By image, I can see, check. Yeah, I can see that most of questions have been addressed.
Topics within the program broadly are an understanding of innovation dynamics. Why are we talking about this? Why today is different than it's been in the past. But a lot of emphasis on partnering and ecosystem development, because increasingly we see that type of partnering essential to innovation. A full day on marketing issues around getting value out of innovation so that you don't find yourself generating great ideas that somebody else gets the benefit of. Innovation culture, teaming, and process innovation strategies, as well as product and leadership. And I'm sure I'm missing them. Those are very general sorts of things. But in each of those sessions, my hope is that you come out with a framework for thinking about the world and some tools to actually be able to do this. And then you have a chance to apply them. So each session is really designed to share some frameworks for contextualizing problems and then tools for solving them. Good. Okay, so once again, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope we can stay in touch and see all of you.
Yeah.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you.